Hello everyone, I'm Jack Fisher and welcome to my world. And anytime I talk about the emergence of artificial intelligence, I try to maintain a balanced perspective. In general, I am optimistic that AI will be a net benefit for humanity. I would even argue that we need to develop this technology. But I also don't deny that every new technology comes with dangers and drawbacks. And in that regard, AI certainly has plenty of those. There's no question that AI, even if it never gains human-level intelligence, will be very disruptive. There's also an element of existential danger with AI that could exceed that of nuclear weapons. But for this video, I don't want to focus on those apocalyptic dangers. Instead, I want to focus on AI Slop. It's a term that gets thrown around a lot these days. It's frequently used in a derogatory context, often as a targeted insult against any content produced by generative AI. And that label does carry quite a bit of weight. Nobody wants their content to be associated with that label. And that general disdain surrounding AI Slop is understandable. But it's also simplistic and reactionary. There's not much in terms of scrutiny or nuance with regards to AI Slop. The term itself is becoming another thought-terminating cliche, a quick and easy criticism that allows people to discount something entirely and without any mental effort. But I believe we should take a closer look at AI Slop, because this isn't just another meme, buzzword, or social media trend. Generative AI is one aspect of artificial intelligence that isn't emerging. It's here, it's available, and like it or not, there is a growing market for it. And just insulting it will not purge it from the internet. So, as I've done with other topics relating to AI, I'm going to try and discuss it in a way I hope is sufficiently balanced. Please note that I am not here to defend AI Slop and those who make it. My goal in this video is to provide a better perspective. Because a term like AI Slop has certain connotations, and those connotations are not unique to generative AI. For people above a certain age, they have lived through multiple shifts in the media landscape. From radio to TV, from TV to computers, from computers to the internet, these shifts were major on multiple levels. But every time something new emerged, there was always a backlash. And that backlash often included denigrating terms towards certain types of content. Go back to the 1950s, and you'll find people calling Elvis and rock and roll evil, un-American, or part of some communist plot. Content that simply showed Elvis shaking his hips provocatively were deemed very damaging for society. Later on in the 1980s, heavy metal music was often labeled as satanic, so much so that it provoked congressional hearings. For many, this wasn't just another genre of music. This music was deemed so dangerous and so damaging that it had to be quashed. Then in the 1990s, there was similar rhetoric surrounding cartoon violence in talk shows like Jerry Springer. Having grown up in that era, I distinctly recall hearing terms like trash and filth to describe this content. It may seem silly and quaint now, but the people throwing these terms around were dead serious. And many of those same people would have argued that this kind of media would lead to the downfall of society and all that they held dear. With the benefit of hindsight, we understand these sentiments were hyperbolic as well as misguided. But AI, many would argue, is a wholly different phenomenon, and I would generally agree with that. This technology marks a paradigm shift in how we produce, view, and consume content of all kind. It doesn't stop at music, it doesn't stop at images or videos. In theory, AI can produce content that's impossible for humans to replicate. And on top of that, AI can produce it at volumes that are limited only by hardware, bandwidth, and power consumption. That potential was on full display when Google demonstrated VO3, a generative AI model for creating videos. And as part of that demonstration, we saw sequences that looked and sounded distressingly real. It had interviews that looked like real interviews, comedians on stage that looked like a real performance. But as impressive as it was, VO3 was still derided as a wellspring for AI slop. There was already a large glut of this content from image generators. It has since subsumed social media, Reddit, YouTube, and even Google Images. And tools like VO3 promise to make it even worse with videos. But I don't think it's fair to compare a tool like VO3 with the content from image generators like DALL-E and Midjourney. One is a fairly new technology relative to the evolution of generative AI. The other is an established tool that has been used for years now, creating large volumes of content that have since filled the internet. And yeah, a large chunk of that content is not good by most measures. I'll gladly concede that most of what AI image generators create deserves to be called slop. The colors are off, the aesthetics are messy, and most people can tell that it was the product of AI. But having used some of these tools in recent years, I can also attest that these tools are improving. As newer models come out and older models are refined, I've seen a lot of progress in the span of 2 years. It's not just because I'm better at providing detailed prompts. Even free AI image generators can produce content that has a lot more polish. It is still common to get this uncanny valley effect with certain images, but that effect is not nearly as stark as it was when these generators first came out. You can still call it slop, you can still denigrate it along with any other content produced by AI, but there's no getting around it. This technology is evolving, and it's evolving fast. Now, that's not just an opinion. Generative AI is producing content that blurs our understanding of art. Even back in 2022, someone used AI to create a portrait, enter it into an art show, and actually won. The individual did not tell anyone it was the product of AI, and nobody could tell the difference between it and every other entry. Naturally, the artists at this show were furious, and rightly so. They put real effort into their work. They produced it with their own hands, following their own unique vision. But this individual just sat at a computer screen, typed in a series of words, and produced something in seconds that won a contest. It's not fair, it's not right, and it compounds these sentiments behind calling all AI digital art slop. But that vitriol does not change the fact that the AI won the contest. Before anyone knew that it was the product of AI, it was just another piece of art. And enough people found it appealing to grant it an award. Even if those feelings shifted dramatically after learning the truth, that does not change the implications. Slop or not, AI is capable of producing content that people find appealing. And remember, this incident with the art contest occurred in 2022. AI art generators have only gotten progressively better ever since. And that's a path that will likely follow for videos. Now, creating this type of content with generative AI is still relatively nascent, but several years from now, it might be difficult to discern an actual video recording from something produced by AI. And what happens when we get to that point? What happens when we don't know for sure if a video is produced by AI or regular humans? And if we ultimately enjoy the content, does it really matter? Now, as of the making of this video, I suspect most people would say that it does matter. If you were to show anyone any random video or image, ask them how they felt about it, but disclose that it was made by AI, that would influence how they see it. Many might recoil in disgust and call it AI slop. But if they didn't know it was the product of AI, if they actually assessed the content on its own merits, then it's very likely that their take would be different. The art show in 2022 was just one instance, and there are likely many others that don't make the news. And that definitely has larger implications. With that in mind, let's assume that generative AI continues to evolve. Given how computer technology has developed over the years, that's a fairly safe assumption. And at some point in the near future, some form of generative AI will produce content that becomes genuinely popular. Maybe it's a short film. Maybe it's a series of YouTube videos. Maybe it's an album of music, a volume of short stories, or even an entire series of books. Setting aside whatever legal or copyright issues this might trigger, this moment would undermine the very idea that all generative AI is slop. Yet if you hate that on principle, the fact that many people still like it hints that AI has crossed another threshold. It has officially evolved to a point where it can produce something that can attract an audience, and not because of sheer novelty. At that point, it might not even matter whether the audience knows it's produced by AI. If enough people like it, then the precedent is set. And from there, AI and the people who utilize it can refine, expand, and polish the content creation process. And when we get to that point, the internet, the entertainment industry, and the general public will be at a crossroads. Because even without AI, humans produced a wide range of content meant to draw eyeballs, evoke certain passions, and hold their attention. The idea that dissemination of this content is specifically tailored to give audiences a never-ending supply of dopamine may seem simplistic, but it's not wholly inaccurate. But even as tech and media companies work tirelessly to supply audiences with a never-ending stream of content, their resources are still limited. The many human workers behind these efforts are still limited. And AI, regardless of how you feel about it, lacks many of those limits. And once that technology is refined, it could end up producing a volume of content that vastly exceeds anything humans could ever hope to produce. Would it still produce slop by the classic definition of the term? Yeah, it probably would. Human tastes are just too eclectic and diverse. But give it enough time, hardware, and electricity, and it's just as likely to produce something that the vast majority of people enjoy. By then, those lamenting the dead internet theory might feel vindicated. But if the content itself still resonates with a wide audience, and if people like it the same way they've liked human-made content for years, then how much of that really matters? Now, I'm not saying it wouldn't matter at all. There are serious and relevant concerns about what happens once generative AI can produce popular content at high volumes. Our current infrastructure, from movie studios to musicians to publishers, is in no way equipped to handle that. It's very likely that artists, actors, and creatives of all kinds would be severely displaced, and that will bring consequences. But I'm also of the opinion that the future of content creation is not an either-or scenario. I believe there will always be a place for content made solely by humans. The fact that there's still a market for vinyl records is proof enough of that. In the end, the goal shouldn't be to fight against generative AI. That is a losing battle on all fronts. The goal should be to find a way to coexist with it. Now, I don't claim to know what that ultimately looks like. Maybe various channels and platforms will organize themselves to make clear which provide AI content, which provide human-made content, and which mix in both. TV went through a similar evolution with the shift from black and white to color to cable and to streaming. The internet went through a similar evolution with the rise of social media. Generative AI and the way people consume it will likely go through its own unique path of evolution. Many will still call it slop every step of the way. Some may even come up with even more derogatory terms, both for the content itself and for those who consume it. But like all the controversial and divisive content that came before it, AI-generated content will eventually find an audience. The tools we have now would not exist as they do if that weren't the case. How large that audience gets and what form this content will take, only time will tell. For now, calling it AI Slop may feel appropriate and even justified. But nobody should expect that label to stop generative AI or dissuade others from using it or consuming it. To think otherwise is to think like the same people who sought to ban Elvis from shaking his hips. One way or another, generative AI will continue to evolve. And no matter what we end up calling it, we'll have to evolve with it. Thanks for watching, everyone, and thanks for joining me in my world. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and until next time, take care and stay safe.